How far can you row in a canoe? If the answer's pretty far, then multiply that distance by 1,000 and you might stand a chance against a Pacific Islander. Cyclonic wind, crashing waves, and strong tides are no match for those with the true heart of an explorer who were making their way across the ocean well before the Iron Age or the rise of the Greek Empire. There's a lot you probably never knew about the history of the Pacific Islands. Welcome to Things You Probably Never Knew, the channel where if you didn't already know, you do now. Hit that subscribe button unless you already know everything, in which case, well done. In this video, we're going to explore the hows, whats, and whys regarding Pacific Island history. There'll be a lot you do know, but also a lot you don't, so stick around. Hey, you might even learn something. Ready? Let's get started. Old-fashioned ingenuity. How on earth do people travel to and occupy distant island countries? It's an interesting concept. When you think about it, the technology and know-how to create hollowed-out wooden boats from surrounding trees has existed for an extremely long time. The oldest known, the Pesse canoe, was found in the Netherlands, and it's thought to have been constructed between 8,200 and 7,600 BC. This was a time when megafauna such as woolly mammoths and hairy rhinoceroses were being hunted by saber-toothed tigers and cave lions. Truly a time of nightmarish creatures. So we know roughly when humans began making rudimentary watercraft, but that's only one piece of the puzzle. The real question is, when did they begin making them well enough to go forth and populate remote islands in the South Pacific? The beginning. The first seafarers to venture forth into the South Pacific originated from the Solomon Islands of near Oceania. These were an established people, first colonized by travelers coming from the Bismarck Islands and New Guinea between 30,000 and 28,000 BC. Sea levels were lower then, and many islands were joined by great land bridges which made migration a much easier endeavor. But when sea levels rose, canoe technology had to contend with greater distances and much harsher weather conditions. In short, they had to be built tough. A twin-hull sailing canoe design was both extremely stable on the high seas, as well as having the ability to travel against wind, wave, and tide. This enabled the Solomon Islanders to make the biggest trip over water by a human being to date. In 1300 BC, they successfully navigated an almost 1,400-mile journey to the island of Fiji. Imagine leaving the familiar coastline of your native land and venturing forth into the unknown as home faded away behind you. The next expansion. After a couple of centuries consolidating their position and populating their new home, the Polynesian descendants of the first Melanesian people to make their way over from New Guinea and the surrounding area decided to raise the bar on their ambitions just a little bit. Around 1000 BC, they expanded on their island-hopping efforts by making their way to nearby Samoa and Tonga. Polynesian sailors would frequently hop between these three islands for trade, and sometimes war, in order to secure the food and resources they needed for survival. The long pause. Then something curious happened. After such a wide-ranging and exploratory attitude, no further colonization happened for almost 2 millennia. This period of time is known as the Long Pause, and it seems a bit contradictory for a group of people who braved the unknown and sailed towards the flat blue horizon of the open ocean only to then be content and pursue no other discovery of other island chains. Why would a group of people so interested and capable suddenly halt their success and progress for 2,000 years? 2 rapid bursts of colonization and then nothing. The answer might not be immediately obvious, so a bit more investigation is needed. Despite having twin-hull canoe technology, this wasn't enough for the next phase of Polynesian expansion. The winds around Tonga and Samoa are notoriously strong, and by simulating sailing conditions based on the watercraft at the time, it's clear why the long pause happened. To travel out from these 2 islands regardless of the time of year, you'd be traveling against the wind pretty much the whole time. Therefore, there had to be a period of research and development in order to learn how to navigate and sail against the wind effectively enough to make the next jump. Once they found a way to conquer the onshore wind, it didn't take long to populate the rest of the South Pacific. Finally, 700 AD. Next stop, Tahiti, the Cook Islands, and Marquesas. These would serve as the stepping stones to the rest of the Pacific. They had a better knowledge of how the stars moved across the sky and how to navigate through them. They observed the behavioral patterns of migratory birds and bioluminescence of marine microorganisms at certain tides and times of the year. enabling the Polynesians to more accurately predict which direction the nearest landmass was. Marquesas was the launching pad for the Polynesians reaching Hawaii just 200 years later. Likewise, Easter Island, located at the Far East, was populated in just 300 years. New Zealand was a much further distance away, however. As the crow flies, it's 2,000 miles to the southwest, which equates to a much further distance, meandering across the sea with no small islands on the way to stop at and replenish supplies. It's thought that the first humans landed on New Zealand in 1200 AD, over on the North Island, before quickly spreading to the South Island and then to the nearby Motumaha and Norfolk Island. European settlement. Hot on the tails of the Pacific migration, the first Europeans to land on a Pacific island were the Spanish, who reached the Solomon Islands in 1568. This sparked an idea. Terra Australis Incognita, or unknown southern land, was somewhere out in the blue yonder. Over the next 200 years, European sailors headed to the area in search of land and resources, a little like a Pacific gold rush. In 1643, Abel Tasman charted Tonga and Fiji, after first sighting New Zealand in 1642. In 1722, the Dutch again head further out and land on Easter Island. In 1768, Captain Cook heads to Tahiti. It's during this voyage that he arrived in New Zealand in 1769, amazingly 127 years after the Dutch first made maps of its coastline. Historically, he's regarded as one of the greatest European explorers in the second age of European expansion. Intent on being the one to unearth the Terra Australis Incognita, he then charts a subsequent voyage in 1788 to find the one big landmass thought to occupy the area, and does. Later that same year, he lands in Sydney Harbour and becomes the first European to set foot in Australia since the first original Southeast Asians did 40,000 years prior. The following year, he's killed by Hawaiian natives in a skirmish over a stolen boat. From the mid to late 1800s, colonies of different Europeans feature on more and more Pacific Island nations. The French, Dutch, Spanish, and English established colonies on the islands, with the aim to control the native peoples and reduce what they call incivility and lawlessness. Diseases such as measles, rubella, and smallpox rip through the native populations, who have no inherited immunity against the diseases. It's estimated that between a quarter and a third of all Pacific Islanders died as a result of common European diseases during this time. Christian missionaries and traders began to make their way into the South Pacific in the 1900s, with either enlightenment or money on their minds. To date, the majority of Pacific Islanders are devout Christians, having abandoned much of their native faith and customs as a result of European influence and, at times, force. It's around this time that each island nation underwent its own evolution to become a separate country from those that occupied it. They would go on to establish sovereignty under the rule of a royal family. So that's all we have time for on Pacific Islands history. We hope you've enjoyed it. Most of us know about the European settlement of the Pacific Islands, but not much is known about the native peoples who made their way to the lands thousands of years before. It's amazing that they succeeded through sheer determination and force of will, well before the concept of a modern seagoing ship was ever thought of. To check out more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching Things You Probably Never Knew. If you had fun, please click the like button, subscribe, and enable notifications if you want to see more. And we'll see you on the next video.